Thank you so much. I would like to, I know it's always the same with starting with a thank you, but I really want to thank you, Blanche and Miko, for this cooperation. It has been a really nice working experience, and I think you're doing a very professional job. You're really fast and good. And I think it's also very important what you do with making this bridge between China and Europe and creating a virtual platform for art, especially in these challenging times where you bring positivity, I think. And thank you also all for coming and joining us virtually. So that's always a little bit of an effort to make. So thank you for that, for showing your interest. So the sun in art history, there's so much. So I only chose three artists to talk about a little bit because it's very brief time-wise. And I think the first one you probably know is mainly is a painting about a blue, eerie landscape. It was made in 1872. And it was the start, so they say, about the Impressionist movement. So Monet made this painting, and you see the blue morning set with the sun in red and purple shining into the painting, and it's kind of a reverie of some grandeur to come. And it sets more like a mood, or it's a moment. And this painting is then exhibited in the show exhibition by Impressionists 2 years later, which was then also the platform for this particular painting. The work was very experimental, so the exhibition was a platform for other artists like Degas, Pissarro, Sisley. And so you could say the painting Impression Sunrise was the birth also of the Impressionist movement. And then one decade later, 1973, Nancy Holt made in the Utah desert her sun tunnels. And these sun tunnels were 4 concrete cylinders of about 5 meters in length and almost 3 meters high, so the visitors could easily stand in them without having to duck. And they were placed in a sort of a cross, so the endings of the tunnel were placed on the horizons, where in the winter and summer solstices the sun would engulf the viewer's body inside of the sun tunnels. They also had holes on the upper part, where you could say was the first sun penetration, because the sun penetrated through it and showing the 4 constellations. So she started this project more or less during a difficult time, because her partner Robert Smithson died in a plane crash. But this work is called, together with Robert Smithson, Jetty Spiral, and his friend and rival Michael Heiser, Double Negative, are the 3 works that are said to have an important contribution to land art. Another artist called James Turrell, also in the desert, created a spectacular artwork inside of a former volcano. It's called Rodent Crater. And he worked on this for 30 years. So he's a former pilot. He's interested in aviation, in the sky, mathematics, and perceptual psychology. And he's like the master of light, I would say. He created in these crater sky spaces. And maybe a funny thing to tell is that in March in 2015, people were actually, they could actually visit the crater, but they would have to pay $6,500 to do so. And but now, they say in 2 years, the crater will also be open for the public, so that would be really interesting to go and have a look. But I think you have to be like a really art devote to go to the desert and to visit these artworks. So then maybe the question could also be, what is the function of art? Does it have a function, or does it have a spiritual function or a collective function? It's a difficult question, but for me at least, I would say that art definitely is a link between men and spirituality. And for example, at my art, I really have a deep desire to connect. I'm mostly failing in my personal life, but I think via my art, even if it's just temporarily, I can do this. And so I guess the artist has an idea or a vision, and then brings this artwork to light. But without the viewer, without the participants, then where is the art? So I think the viewer, the participant, is a very important element, a link, as you could say, even in the artistic creation of the work. Maybe I could talk a little bit about the series, Sun Penetrations. So for me, it's important that I can connect with my art. It's not only in the Sun Penetrations, but also in my other ongoing works about the bridges and confession drawings. These are like sketches on paper. But for this exhibition, you showed 15 artworks of the Sun Penetration series. And Sun Penetrations are photographs and videos of the sun, of sunbeams. So the sun penetrating externally into the inner space through half-closed windows or curtains or other holes that it can penetrate through. And it the sun traveled 10,000 to 50 million years to come to your inner space in order to find you. And I think that's kind of miraculous, and then finds you and it brings you life, because without the sun, we know that Earth we would not exist. We really need the sun to survive. But however, all this positive and good power, when the sun shows up, when I'm in my dark space, so to speak, and dark can mean anything depending on where you are, it kind of makes me feel lonely, because the sun traveled so far to come to the Earth, and then I'm there. I'm in a standstill. I'm doing nothing, and the sun is there. And so this contrast, I hope, is also visible in the photographs, which are often quite dark, and then with the sun piercing into the photograph or the video. Then I could say a little bit about one particular work, which is called Deep House, which is also showing in the virtual exhibition showroom. It's referring to house music, so there's like a subgenre called Deep House. But the fact is, of course, it relates to the quarantine that we were in. So we were experiencing house on a really deep level. And myself came in quarantine. I just came back from a 1-month artist in residency in Belgrade, Serbia. And I moved into my new home in Valencia. And in the house were still the old furniture from the previous owners. So although it was my new home, it didn't really feel like home yet. So that could also be the question: what is home? Is it a house or a space, or what exactly is significant is the meaning of home? And then I also related a little bit with the current social media times, where people talk about, I'm going to do deep work, which just means work, but then you switch off your phone so you don't have the social media distraction. And on the photograph of Deep House, you can see the bed. It's made in 2013 in the Netherlands. It's showing the bed in my former bedroom and from my parents' house. You see the sun penetration, but also like a rainbow halo around it, because the sun penetration reflected on another object. And I think for me personally, the bed is like the most deep house, because when you sleep, you're quite vulnerable. So you switch off yourself and feel safe in your house to be able to sleep. And then I also think that we are fortunate that we have a house, the deep house, because we were not for nothing in quarantine. It was for protecting us for the virus, or our environment for the COVID virus. And so yeah, the COVID virus, I think most of us were caught by it quite by surprise. In a weird way, it has also connected the world, because it's a pandemic and we are in it together. And you hear many different stories of how people have dealt with the confinement. Some people have lost their loved ones, which is very, very sad. And still, the virus is still there, so we don't know yet how it's very insecure time. We don't know yet what's going to happen. And for me personally, with my artwork, it also meant how I'm going to make work, because normally I travel and then I make my work. So I had to rethink my production, how I'm going to make a living if I can't travel. And but on the other hand, I also thought that the time confinement was good, because you can do work that was left a little bit behind, so there's time to catch up with things. And I have an enormous database of sun penetrations, and I wanted to do something with those for a long time, but yeah, all these other things came in between. And I just collected all my email addresses of the last 20 years into online MailChimp. It's an online mailing program. And I kind of linked all these things together. And so I chose every day one sun penetration, or I made a new one, and then sent it out to the people on this mailing list. I also shared it on social media. And I also, because of the help of my good friend Juan, I'm not sure if he's here, he said, you have to make a WordPress website. It's more responsive. And because before I made HTML websites, and yeah, when you look at them on the iPhone, on the phone, or on the tablet, it's not so good. and I figured out that it's quite relatively easy to make a web shop with WordPress. So then I also made a product, you could say, in this web shop. So if the people like the sun penetrations, then they could download it as a sort of do-it-yourself project. So they could download it and in a postcard size print it. And but we didn't know, of course, how long is the quarantine. But I'm laughing, but it was really insecure time. And then I read about 40 giorni, it means 40 days in Italian. And it appeared in the 14th century during the plague epidemic. They had the boats staying into the port for 40 days to prevent the disease spreading. So I took this as the title for the project, and decided for 40 days I would do this. And also this 40 days was picked up by funding in the Netherlands. So there's also a book with the same title of it. And now I'm so pleased and so thankful. There's also the virtual exhibition, which I think fits very well, because it speaks about quarantine and still connecting people. And There's good and bad things to say about social media and all the online things, what's going on, but I think this is one of the good ones.